In the prayers of holy followers of Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. Good evening, everybody. This is Father Joseph Swaden. I am pressing the wrong buttons everywhere. And so I am now going to just start by saying, okay. I am now learning that if you have a notepad you keep for your computer, you should probably have the notes you want to say. So, for those new here, my name is Joseph Swaden. I've worked in Orthodox apologetics since 1998, and I'm the founder of NFT, True Orthodox and Ecumenical News, since 2004. We've been in the apologetic space on Facebook since 2016 and on YouTube since 2018. And if you appreciate what we do here, please like and subscribe. Today we do our live Q&A session where you can get your questions answered live as well as member-requested video reviews. So let's get started. And if you want to jump on stream to ask a question or make a comment or issue a debate challenge, just click the link on the top of the chat. So what we're doing here, again, we're doing the cafe chat because we do have the handy cafe. So if you want to jump in and make a comment on the cafe screen live, I am going to put that up here as soon as I choose the correct layout. Or if you want to, as I mentioned, if you want to, wrong thing there. If you want to call in, the link is at the top of the YouTube chat. And I can also add it to the cafe chat as well, just so that people have it. But either way, we are going here. So if you don't know what that weird chat window is, if you're new here, just go to afrosinoscafe.com and you'll be able to join in and put your chats on the screen live. Also, if you want to send a super chat, we really could use your support. It's the end and the beginning of the month are always tricky periods, and so there's a couple of bills that are coming due, so we'll worry about that. So we'll worry about that in due time. Today was an interesting day. Let me see here. Anonymous man, well, you're asking in the wrong thing because that's not a super chat, but fine. Since you asked the first question, I just did it. Did you have the Hildebrand chart that you and Bishop Enoch made your part 3 on Hildebrand? Strangely, I feel like I saw it a couple of days ago, so it's very possible. If you could DM me on the cafe, I will try to I'll try to reach out and get that. But if you'll notice in the cafe, I've created a new section called Stream Chat. All you have to do is click in there and join the chat. It's pretty simple. And now there's a chat for dedicated stuff. Evening, EJ. An evening to everyone listening. T-Con, I'm sorry to hear about your struggles. God willing that works so okay. Christ is among us, Father Antonius. And so, yeah, let's get started. So, today was interesting. Just if you're an obsessive YouTube watcher and you have us subscribed, you probably saw that there was a debate on the Crucible channel between Pine Sap and Luigi on the papacy. And being that arguing with the papacy is my favorite subject, and you never get a chance, Dimitri says, Father bless. May God bless you in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. I will say that I was able to get in on the call-in section and ask some questions of Pine Sap. He didn't seem too appreciative and got kind of angry. Father Boniface, Benedicite. Anyone wants to join in on the cafe chat, just go to afrosinoscafe.com and click on chat. You'll see it's right here on the top. As to why I'm using the purple screen, which is better known as the kind of private window screen, there is a practical reason for that. And that is, if I open up Afrosinos Cafe in any regular tab, as you'll notice, I actually have this set up very similar to a mobile setup. And if I increase the size, it becomes like a mobile setup where the live people are on the bottom, and then you can see the bottom of the chat moving from there. So the reason why I do that is because that's actually like very large screen, so it matches like a mobile. If I was to not put that in a private screen, what happens is I can administer the cafe from a screen inside. But if I then change up the size on one, it changes up on the other. Let me help you with that here. I'm just going to say cafe.com. And if you may have noticed, I have a whole bunch of notifications there. We are being attacked by spam bots. So this is the best way to get in the chat is while we're live here. If you create an account and you tell me, hey, can you approve my account? I will gladly do it. Unfortunately, we get hit with probably 15 to 20 requests every week. And unfortunately, 14 to 15 of those are usually spam bots. At this point, I'm now not approving anyone with a mail.ru or a 24/7 Europe domain. Just forget about it. You're never getting on the cafe because I've already dealt with at least 4 of those where they get on, don't say anything, and the next thing you know, they're posting advertisements and they have to be deleted. It's really quite a frustration, but it's part of what we do here because we want to keep a safe space open to discuss true orthodoxy, to put up the news, to keep things going. And that's really what we're all about here when it comes right down to it. Again, this is a live Q&A session. So if you are interested and you want to call in, you have questions, you may have never heard about orthodoxy before, you may have never heard of true orthodoxy before, you may just want to ask a question about Christianity, etc. Call in. We'd be glad to answer questions, answer debate challenges. It's been kind of crazy. So past that, I think that unless I get some kind of requests for a video, etc., most likely we're going to focus on answering questions. And I guess I can play the thing. I have it from the I was able to stream live here, so if you haven't seen it, I can put that up. But it ended up streaming the entire call in to the end, so it's like 48 minutes when in fact I was only on like 7 minutes. So I could just put on the 7 minutes because I'm going to be deleting all the other stuff out anyway. The Crucible guys are really great about sharing, but when it comes right down to it, they are moving a lot of their stuff to their paid model on the Crucible.video. So most likely this video will be moved there also. So I want to have as little of the stuff that's not relevant as possible. I thought the other Paul made a funny comment and some funny comments, and it was a pretty good time to be had. I was surprised. Luigi brought up Hildebrand, so it was a little more high level than I expected. Thank God. And so we'll see how that plays out. But in any case, feel free to call in using the link at the top of the chat, comment or ask questions in the chat. This is what we do every Sunday at 8:30. And so let me see here. So far, I'm not seeing any comments. I'm here and patiently waiting. I've got my streaming thing set up, so I'm here for the long haul today. And let's get to the hard questions. Let's take a look. Like what is kind of like on people's minds. Okay, so other than that, let me see here. I mean, we all know the news. For those who don't know, there is kind of chaos in many parts of the world, including England right now, due to the kind of anti-migrant protests and the subsequent kind of chaos that has erupted between a lot of Muslim people and a lot of English people. So that's been a big thing. There hasn't been too much in terms of big world news in terms of orthodoxy this week, which is probably good news. Usually it's actually never good news when something happens. But in any case, that's what I'm here for, and hopefully we get some questions. I'm checking on Gab. I'm checking on Twitter. Let me see here. And no, I don't see anything on Twitter, Facebook, StreamYard. So we're good on questions today. This will be the shortest stream ever. No, I'm just kidding. In fact, I'm going to try to see if I can put on what we had, what I did on the Crucible there, and we'll cover that. And you get to see how, Pine Sap is considered I'd say he's considered an up-and-coming Roman Catholic apologist. He's very polished in his speech. but he doesn't like being caught off guard, and that became patently obvious. That became patently obvious in dealing with him. So I'm gonna see here. There were some old favorites. Lemon, who was part of the True Orthodox debate, and he was one of the call-ins, was actually right before me. So in any case, I'm going to share that real quick, and we'll take a look. So if you missed it, this is all that is going to be left, by the way, when I'm done chopping tonight, as soon as it processes, because I only want to have the part that we have, and the rest should stay with the Crucible. I'm not trying to steal a bunch of free video for them. So let's get right over to that. Give me a moment.
Lemon, appreciate it very much. Next caller we got here, Father Joseph Swaden. Welcome. You're on mute right now, but go ahead whenever you're ready.
Hey, welcome. May God bless you. First off, there were a lot of things covered in this debate, so it was pretty interesting. I saw very interesting points. I think both of you represented your positions admirably, but because you brought up some obscure things, I can reference them pretty much with ease in my questions, and I have 3 of them. The first one, Pinesap, is we've talked about, for example, what happened with Vigilius. Subsequently, I'm sure you're aware of the schism of the 3 chapters, which lasted approximately 150 years, in which various Western sees broke communion with Rome, and in some cases remained in communion with the rest of the church through Constantinople. How does this fit in your model that everyone needs to be in communion with Rome when we're talking about people who are in communion with the church rejecting Rome for almost 150 years?
So it's a misapplication of the principle of Galatians 1:8. And we see this long after the Great Schism, for instance. I mean, the Lefebvrean Schism, for instance, they perfectly think that they are upholding the faith of the popes before Vatican II. Right?
If I may, because that's a misnomer.
Hold on, let him finish.
If you're wondering why I'm being... Okay, hold on. If you're wondering why I'm being kind of an interrupting orange here, it's because I've seen this kind of debate tactic before where somebody goes into a bloviating long speech, and as soon as I spot what they're going to do, I kind of want to cut it off as fast as possible, because it just allows them to create a false narrative, which you'll see in just a moment.
I just want to state one thing, though. Mm-hmm. So I can't remember I think his name is Ferrandis, if I'm not mistaken. I probably am butchering his name, though. I have it in my notes. But he states actually one of the reasons why he went into schism is because he saw the approval of Rome, of the Council of Chalcedon, as being sort of like an infallible strength. And so because he thought that, essentially Vigilius contradicted that approval, that thus Vigilius would be like a heretic or what have you, right? Which this goes back to the conceptions of even Saint Robert Bellarmine or what have you, who don't think that a pope is above the faith. A pope is still bound to the faith, even though the fathers of Vatican I say this.
Okay, first off, you are comparing apples and oranges when you make a Lefebvre comparison. Lefebvre and the SSPX considered themselves in communion in some technical sense with Rome. These people broke communion with Rome because they thought they were heretics. This is a totally different scenario.
But they call Rome neo-modernist and neo-Protestant, and even Archbishop.
But they still believe they were part of the Catholic Church.
There would have to be a future council, right? Declaring the Rome.
Did the SSPX believe that Rome was still the head of the church or not?
Yeah. But I mean, so did the people who broke away from the church. You can see this in the works of St. Columbanus, where he still refers to Rome as the head of the church, but he not only thinks that Rome erred, he thought the entire Second Council of Constantinople, with the approval of all the patriarchs, erred as well, which would do actually more to say the other Paul's ecclesiology of Protestantism.
What you're saying is basically they were in communion with Rome inadvertently, even though that's the opposite of what they said. Cool. Let's get to the second question. And if you're wondering why I just wanted to stop there on that question, it's because in the call-in period, you usually have 5 to 7 minutes tops. And so it was clear that he was going to try to dance around the question of, well, they were still in communion somehow. If they broke communion, they broke communion. But he couldn't admit that. So we continue. You mentioned a letter to Clement from the Bishop of Kiev, a Pope Clement. Which Pope Clement was that?
That I would have to remember. It in the reference.
You mentioned it was around the 11th century.
Witness,
that's why it's very important.
Yeah, in the Orthodox Patristic Witness, I think it's either Pope Clement I want to say third.
Third?
Maybe. It might be third. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Do you know who the Pope Clement III was in the 11th century? He was the pope that is now considered an anti-pope because of the fact that during the investiture controversy with the Dictatus Papae, they deposed Hildebrand of Savano, who you understand as St. Gregory VII, and he was actually Pope Clement III, recognized as the real pope throughout the church while the Civil War was going on, was talking to the Orthodox because he held a similar ecclesiology, whereas Hildebrand's, with the Dictatus Papae, was creating the model of papal monarchy, which leads me to my third question, which
I wouldn't agree with that assertion.
Well, you can disagree, but the Dictatus Papae is pretty clear.
There's actually no proof that Dictatus Papae is an official decree binding on the entire church.
What there is proof of, however, is that the Synod of Brixton condemned him for those very ideas.
Hold on.
Things doesn't invalidate
either. I'm curious as to whether this actually this shared. Okay, you are approved, Anonymous Man 115. Just so you know, you're in there. You just have to go to the stream chat. The Dictatus Papae, Father Simeon, is a 10th century document. I've shown it before. I shall show it again. It's an 11th century document that was written in 1075, which basically is the kind of the foundational document of Roman Catholicism, one that terrifies people. Oh, we have a caller, Jeremy. Okay, Jeremy left. All right, we had a caller, Jeremy. If you hear this, please come back. We don't have many of these right now. Anyone wants to call in, they just have to click the link on the top of the chat. And so let's get to the Dictatus Papae. Yeah, exactly. What it comes down to is that, if we look at the principles of the Dictatus Papae, it is literally like the foundational document of the Roman Catholic Church. None of these powers existed beforehand. They literally invented them. And the other bishops in the West were so horrified that they deposed him at the Synod of Brixton in 1080. Your admin page of the cafe was showing when you tabbed over. It's okay. Wait. Okay. Let me see. I'm gonna just close that. The only reason I went into the admin page was to approve Anonymous Man. So he is approved. John MC says Papas Fritas. John MC is a member. So if you want to have your text up, super chat or join. We really could use the support for the channel. I will take off the banner that probably annoys people though. In any case, so that got pretty bad. So I'm not sure where. Let me see if I can get back to this thing because he's pretty mad already, but he gets really mad by the end, which is great.
He saw the approval of Rome of the Council of Chalcedon as being sort of like an infallible strength, and so because he thought that essentially Vigilius contradicted that approval, that thus Vigilius would be like a heretic or what have you, right? Which this goes back to the conceptions of even Saint Robert Bellarmine or what have you, who don't think that a pope is above the faith. A pope is still bound to the faith, even though the fathers of Vatican I say this.
Okay, first off, you are comparing apples and oranges when you make a Lefebvre comparison. Lefebvre and the SSPX considered themselves in communion in some technical sense with Rome. These people broke communion with Rome because they thought they were heretics. This is a totally different scenario.
But they call Rome neo-modernist and neo-Protestant, and even Archbishop.
But they still believe they were part of the Catholic Church.
There would have to be a future council declaring the Rome.
Did the SSPX believe that Rome was still the head of the church or not?
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
so
they
did
did.
the people who broke away from the church. You can see this in the works of Saint Columbanus,
So
where he still refers to
error
Rome
mean.
as the head of the church, but he not only thinks that Rome erred, he thought the entire Second Council of Constantinople, with the approval of all the patriarchs, erred as well. Which
Okay.
would do actually more to, like, say, the other Paul's ecclesiology.
What you're saying is basically
yeah,
they were
no,
communing
Papai
with
is,
Rome
it's
inadvertently,
Latin.
even though that's the opposite of what they said. Cool. Let's get to the second question. You mentioned a letter to Clement from the Bishop of Kiev, a Pope Clement. Which Pope Clement was that?
That I would have to remember. It in the reference.
You mentioned it was around the 11th
patristic
century.
witness.
That's why it's very important.
Yeah, in the Orthodox patristic witness, I think it's either Pope Clement the, I want to say third, maybe it might be third. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Do you know who the Pope Clement III was in the 11th century? He was the pope that is now considered an anti-pope because of the fact that during the investiture controversy with the Dictatus Papae, they deposed Hildebrand of Savano, who you understand as St. Gregory VII, and he was actually Pope Clement III, recognized as the real pope throughout the church while the Civil War was going on, was talking to the Orthodox because he held a similar ecclesiology, whereas Hildebrand's with the Dictatus Papae was creating the model of papal monarchy, which leads me to my third question, which
I wouldn't agree with that assertion.
Well, you can disagree, but the Dictatus Papae is pretty clear.
There's actually no proof that Dictatus Papae is an official decree binding on the entire church.
What there is proof of, however, is that the Synod of Brixton condemned him for those very ideas.
Hold on, one at a time here, guys.
And most scholars actually affirm that principle. I've looked into scholarship on this.
Okay, the problem is that it doesn't matter because of all the canon law that was written afterwards by Deus Dedis and other canonists was following the same model as the Dictatus Papae, saying the Dictatus Papae just makes it more obvious that it was the origin of
your own canonist, Theodore Balsamon, cites the donation of Constantine for why the transfer from Rome to New Rome occurs. So he cited forgery from the transfer.
Hang on, stop for a second.
Citing forgeries are just wrong things doesn't invalidate either.
But the Dictatus Papae is not
hang on. Stop for a second. Father Joseph, if you want to get to your third question, you'll have to do that now. If you want to keep arguing about this, that'll have to be your last point.
Fair enough. Okay. This is part of the reason why I kind of just had to switch. Frankly, you don't get enough time in the Collins, but Pine Sap nor any other Roman Catholic apologist is going to ever formally do a debate with us because this is what happens. Okay. Since we were just to kind of springboard off the models thing, are you aware? Do you know who Metropolitan Hincmar of Reims is?
Yes, I do.
And that was the 9th century, correct? God bless you.
Yes, I do. I know probably what you're going to bring up, but just go ahead.
And his constitutions on the Metropolitanate and the independence of the Metropolitans in regards to Rome, which Rome itself accepted. And from I would agree. Pines have had no good responses. He didn't respond to Patrick Craig of Trulia, and he avoided the quote from Eric Barr. He absolutely did. It was absolutely sad. It was just sad. Like, I couldn't believe how badly he did. This is occurring in the 9th century.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
The point is that the model of even metropolitan independence, not even patriarchal independence, was something that was foreign until the introduction of the Dictatus Papae, which is why there were so many civil wars.
So the interesting thing about Saint Hincmar of Reims is actually the document that Ubi cites on his website. If you go to the conclusion, it says even against Hincmar's statements in that document that he writes, he still ultimately is obedient to Rome. And he actually, this is recounted in Warren H. Carroll's work. He actually apologizes and says, I thank God for punishing me for my sins against the Apostolic See for this correction. So he still accepted a correction from Rome over and above even what he wrote. So it means that ultimately at the center of his ecclesiology was this acceptance of Rome's prerogatives to sort of interject in the whole dispute that he was having over, I think it was the guy who was appointed, he didn't think was a very holy or pious man.
When Rome was Orthodox, of course everybody accepted its headship. That's not under dispute. But what you did bring up, Honorius, and the papal oath, which you mentioned that the disparity between preaching the infallible faith but condemning Honorius's, I think you called it weakness. Are you aware that papal oaths from Vigilius until the 11th century required each papal claimant to condemn Honorius as a heretic?
the thing about Honorius being a heretic is like I said with St. Cardinal Newman, even if I was to grant that he was a heretic, the capacity in which he erred would present no problem for Vatican I, because he didn't make a ex cathedra binding statement upon the entire church.
We're not
in his
talking
letters
about
to
one
Sergius of
pope. We're
Constantinople.
talking about 400 years
Right,
of popes.
make this your final point, by the way. Make this your final point.
My point was that to reduce it to this question of whether Honorius was a heretic or not is ridiculous. He was considered a heretic in the West by the popes for 400 years.
And even if he was, that's perfectly fine. That's what I'm telling you. And then you're bringing
up slap some Newman on it, and then, that's not how it's going to work. Okay,
slap
well, whatever.
Newman.
It's fine. I'm done. Thank you so much, Luigi. Great job. Have a great
Thank
one.
you.
Pine Sap, if you want to respond to that, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you want,
he says slap some Newman on it, but it's like this is the Council Father of Vatican I, right? This would be like if I was, having injunctions against like the Palamite synods, for instance, and say Luigi, for instance, put forward an adequate defense, and I just said, "Oh, you're slapping some Philotheos Kikinos on it," right? It doesn't matter. It's like this is how the council was viewed. This is how the council was received by the people who lived at that time, and me using that as a defense of the council is perfectly licit. I don't see what the point of slapping some Newman is on. I think that's just a little interjection that he wants to have to feel great about himself.
All right, and our next caller here.
Okay. It was not my purpose to just make to feel like better about it, but it is fun to say slap some Newman on it. I don't know why. I assume just because slapping some Newman on it is just, it's just a funny phrase. It comes from that came from the other Pauly was making a joke about Flex Seal, and apparently, slap some Newman on it. It's a reference to Flex Seal. You just slap some Flex Seal on it, and voila, the Roman Catholic ecclesiology suddenly makes sense. Yeah, exactly. And from that's true. Who cares what the Council Fathers at Vatican I said? That's not the church in the First Millennium Youth. It's very true. Let me see here. If anyone wants to join, again, I was not making a Seinfeld reference. You know what? Since we haven't gotten anything going yet, again, if you want to join in the cafe chat, I highly recommend it. Go to frosenoscafe.com, or you can do a super chat here or become a member, and I put your chats up. Otherwise, we'll just be reading them out. But as we continue on, that is a lot. Father Boniface is here. Okay. Otherwise, we'll just be reading them out. But Benedicite.
Benedicite.
How are you doing today, Father?
Good. I don't think I'm going to slap any Newman on my my cuisine.
Okay. I was going to ask. Oh, hold on. Can we ever know if we begin to repent? That's an interesting question. I would think that we can become aware that we're trying to repent. I don't know that there's ever a point where we can be fully certain of our repentance except through the mystery. Through the mystery of repentance, when one confesses to Christ, the seal of the mystery through the prayer assures us that those sins have been forgiven. As to like the state of mind where we're repentant, that is going to be a little trickier because then you're weighing out with pride. Cafe Reader 1, their Father Simeon asked, last time I asked Vladika the stupid question about the Last Judgment, what I really wanted to ask was, we are not saved alone means. I think that's a valid question. I think that the main issue with the term "we're not saved alone" is that it's is that technically we're always saved through the grace of God. We can't. Otherwise, it becomes Pelagianism. So that would be what I'd have to say on that one. Lamonto809, please join us over in the chat, or if you want to send a super chat, you can. Says, so why should I worship in a garage if Antioch still has grace? I hate to say this, but we have bigger churches. There are some churches that are in a garage. There are some Antiochian churches, I'm sure, which are in a garage. You don't have assurance of grace when you're dealing with heresy. Okay, Nikolai Bauman has joined the chat. Greetings.
Good evening, Father. Father bless.
May God bless you. I can barely hear you, but let me see here.
That better?
Yeah, that's better.
Perfect.
Okay. So yeah, it's a very good point there was. Now, how do you know Antioch has sacramental grace? Okay, so that's good. Do you have any questions or thoughts right now?
I do, Father. Sorry, I just wanted to hop in because this is a lot to type out. I actually have a question regarding a Bishop Jerome Shaw and the events in 2013 that got him, retired in the Roquefort MP. It's difficult to find information about that online. I was told by, I think it was Sava, to get in touch with you, and you're here.
Yeah. The problem is that when you're dealing with the question of Bishop Jerome Shaw of the Roquefort MP,
Yeah.
It is that a lot of this stuff was really kind of backstabbing stuff that went on in the background. And what I mean by that is Bishop Jerome Shaw originally was a big proponent of the Union. Many people suspected that this was because he was promised an episcopal rank. Whether that's true or not, he was given an episcopal rank within 1 or 2 years of the Union. At least in our case, and I know in other cases, he was basically going behind people's backs when he knew that were not. Reader John says, I lived through that ordeal. I'd love it if you want to comment on this, but he was going, basically around kind of promising everyone he could that was nervous or unsure of their faith that he would get them canonical corrections. And so basically what happened was he ended up taking in a group that was really kind of out there that claimed some kind of descendants from James Toombs.
Yeah.
And
so forgive me, Father. Part of the reason I ask is the priest who brought me into Roquefort MP was actually one of the ordainees at the event. So it's one of these things where I'm actually chasing after where this whole thing came from, because there's a lot of things about my entry into World Orthodoxy that were tainted by this man. So I'd like to know who he was and what he did. But was it a whole group that he brought in, the 13 guys who ordained, or was it a more scattered?
Yeah, it was basically, for the most part, there were a couple of schismatics from our synod, but it was for the most part a group that kind of had formed from James Toomb and another bishop who were kind of semi-Rosicrucianists, and they kind of had their own unique ecclesiology, and he brought them in en masse. But he had promised Anthony Bondi, who had turned out he was a married bishop, he had promised him that he would somehow raise him up the ranks, maybe to archpriest or something. That never happened. I think he ended up going to subdeacon or deacon, or as far as that. And but he had brought in all the other people. So like Father Mark Rowe comes from that group, etc. They have a very, very strange. Hold on 1 second.
Please. Forgive me, so that I can look into it. Let's say Bishop James Toombs.
Yeah, Bishop James Toombs is where he was. Now, Bishop James Toombs was an independent. He was received into the Roquefort in like the 1960s, but he was very cagey about his kind of visibility. Anonymous Man 15 is popping on. Hello and welcome. And we will get to your question next. Hold on. And so basically, the Roquefort realized that he was actually living with a wife, and that he had been kind of faking the monastery thing, and they kind of disavowed him, etc. They were like, you can't do this. And he was like, he did the same thing, ironically, that Bondi did, which is he said, I just won't live with her anymore. Now, Bondi ended up actually getting a divorce, but as we would know from other situations, unfortunately, it was not because he wanted to be a monastic. It was because he was with other people. So, that was a scandal. It didn't affect our synod, but there was a period before the Roquefort MP Union where they attempted to reach out to our synod, and we told them, basically they had to correct themselves, sign a confession of faith, so they weren't interested in that. And so
that reach out happened?
Huh?
When did that contact happen?
Oh, probably 2006, 2007. It
Gotcha.
didn't get far because I know because Metropolitan John asked me, and I think Liturgical Enoch, who was then Father Enoch at the time, to just basically write him a letter, basically saying, what, is required in our synod to be, corrections and things like that. And he was like horrified. And he was like, you should already recognize me. And we were like, no. and but I guess Father John Shaw or Bishop Jerome didn't have that problem. So
who knows? Forgive me, Father. One more addition to the question. Part of the story about this instance in 2013 when Bishop Shaw did all this mass ordination is that he was led along by a non-ordained deacon. And I've heard from someone recently that person. Do you know who that person was? Again, I was directed to you to seek clarification as to who that guy might
no,
have been.
that part I don't know. I don't know
Okay.
who was advising that. Wasner writes, and welcome to Reader John and Vladika Enoch, Master Bless.
God bless.
Okay. Wasner writes, my previous priest was brought in through that whole ordeal. He was with the Milan Synod. We asked why he was with ROCOR MP, and he told me I just wanted to be part of the official church. Yeah, he's referring to Father John Villegas, who eventually became Hieromonk Raphael Villegas in the ROCOR MP. So, yeah, we know a little bit about the history here. But if you want to join in the chat, send in a super chat, become a member, or pop in at afrosinoscafe.com. We lost somebody. We lost Father Boniface. Hopefully he comes back because we were just getting back to conversations. I just have to finish when people send comments, etc. And EG just wrote, Father Boniface, good evening. And then he disappeared. Okay. Hopefully he comes back. Okay. How's it going, Liturgical? You were there for some of this. Nikolai's asking about the whole Jerome Shaw thing. But basically, yeah, he created kind of a Western Rite grouping, which was not really like ours. Now, to some degree, that got moderated with the whole Father Aiden thing, and then eventually they took in, what's his face? Jonah, who we know he has his own problems.
That's back when they were considered a vicariate.
Yeah. And so the whole thing, it was never on a good foundation. And so that is why we kind of saw this coming from a mile away.
Well, and there's a rotating door of people that come in from like Anglican schismatic groups, and then some from, I guess, the Milan Synod, and then some from like what's the name of that group, like Orthodox Catholic in America or some.
Yeah, well, the Milan Synod was a singular. That was even though there have been occasional individuals who left, there was a period in like 2010 to 2011 where a group left en masse. That was a schism from our church that. I mean, Father Bishop Enoch and I remember that one actually pretty well. It was pretty traumatic.
Yeah, so no, that was something they were plotting for like 7 years. We later found out.
Yeah,
they had actually been in contact with Hilarion back in 2001 in some cases.
Yeah,
I mean, there was very. I mean, remember former Metropolitan Hilarion, then Bishop Hilarion of New York of the Eastern Diocese, whatever it was. He was also involved in trying to steal the church in Woodstock in the 1990s.
Yeah.
I mean, ROCOR did some shady stuff even before the Union. I'm not saying everybody in it did. But there were people in it who could do some shady stuff. So, I mean.
Well, there's a prohibition from, I think, 1974 that Metropolitan Hilarion lifted in 2011. That's
1979 you're talking about.
Is it? Yeah, 79. Yeah,
it was that because the Western Rite of the time did not conform to that which was done when the West was with Orthodoxy.
Correct. Yeah.
Then it was.
You're right.
Which, to be my opinion is I don't want there to be, even if ROCOR MP was never ROCOR MP, I would not want there to be a Western Rite in there.
Yeah.
Because it's not gonna work out. How is something called the Russian Orthodox Church going to understand what is and what isn't, and going to be fair on the basis of what should be genuine Western Rite Orthodoxy? And the fact is, I mean, you had St. John Maximovich. He was actually a scholar. People act like he was some sort of like country bumpkin or something like that. But he did know like Greek and Latin, Syriac. He knew various languages, and he did chair commissions studying issues. But he had people attacked him for not just that, but for like 4 or 5 other reasons. So he passes away. There wasn't really anybody to regulate the issue.
Yeah.
And so, I part of the rationale was that, look, if they don't have anybody competent to do it and they don't have a protector, they're just going to say, just do Eastern Rite because we're not going to have to worry about people doing crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And
I
so my
remember.
point is that I would never want, like I told people that, I don't want your group to do Western Rite because I'm not confident that people who are like, well, I want you to help me. I'm like, I can't help you if I'm not confident you're going to do what you're supposed to do.
Mhm.
I'm not trying to be mean or cruel or what have you. It's just I've seen that not work out so many
We've
times.
dealt with too much bad Western Rite already.
So
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. And I remember, what was his name? Bondi?
Bondi, yeah.
Yeah, I actually talked to him in person. I remember he wanted me to come to the Western Rite. He wanted to make me a priest, actually, among other people that I found out later. And after talking to him and finding that he was like a full-blown humanist, and not to mention some other stuff that I found out about him.
Wacky beliefs, yeah.
Well, wacky beliefs and some relationships he shouldn't have had as an archimandrite, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
All right. Now I should add, we have some comments here. So Orthodox Waznas, didn't they do a mass ordination?
Yes.
Yes, they did. I believe it was 14 people.
That's why Bishop Jerome was forcibly.
14.
It was less?
I think it was 3 or 4.
Oh, I thought, okay. All right. So the point
I
is,
actually wrote a letter to them about after all the stuff happened. It was like
yeah,
it was kind of interesting. But I actually told Jerome, I used to be Facebook friends, which what is that? It's using contact somebody.
Yeah.
I told him, I think on the private chat, I didn't really talk a lot to him. I said, look, this is a very stupid thing because it doesn't matter what argument you bring forward, it's not going to work out.
Yeah, that was the whole premise he was forcibly retired on.
Yeah, I mean, he could have if he wasn't. I mean, he wasn't learned enough in some issues. Like he could have talked about how before the Niconian reforms, they generally, Russian bishops ordained 2 or 3 priests at a time. Mm-hmm. He could have said, well, they did it then, but he never did. I don't think a lot of these people knew exactly even their basis for making historical arguments about how to do things. Mm-hmm. Jerome's one of the more, historicist of them.
Yeah.
Among the Rocor MP bishops.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm not saying I'm some great historian or whatever, because I'm not.
Well, and there was factions that came into play. Like Bishop Jerome was considered part of like an old guard faction, and then there's a whole new, more modern faction, and that's kind of centers around Jordanville.
Well, Bishop Jerome when he was Father John Shaw from back in the 70s and late 60s, all right? He was always part of that like more moderate Rocor faction that was like, oh well,
yeah.
The Anthony of Geneva type group. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the liberal faction.
Yeah, the idea was that the real problem with the MP was that he was just under the communists, and as soon as that ends, we can fix everything. All right, and without really investigating. I mean, it was kind of a crazy view. I mean, but then again, look, Anthony of Geneva was the chief consecrator for Valentine of Suzdal. Mm-hmm. I mean, like how did it's like that? There was all these kind of cacophony of positions that sort of existed in with it. I mean, that historically that makes sense since the origination of Rocor from the 20s and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably not going to be some time until you had some sort of coherent, position on all these issues. And remember, they tried to. There was at one point, I think, in 71 or the 72 Sobor, there was this big push to declare the Moscow Patriarchate formally, like not part of the church. Mm-hmm. And like supposedly, like Anthony of Geneva and 2 or 3 others said that they would break away from the main Rocor over it. Mm-hmm. And so they basically had to compromise on all the statements. Everybody kind of knows about that history anyway. But
Now, I will say, now Cafe Reader 1, that's Father Simeon there, said, since Hilarians repose, all Rocor Western Rite are now under their respective diocesan bishop. In Australia, Rocor Western Rite is gone in Rocor. That's true. It is also disappearing in most parts of the U.S.
Yeah.
The main administrator behind that, Archbishop Peter of Chicago, has basically said he wants nothing left to do with it. Mm-hmm. So it's being dismantled. And for us, that's not actually a negative. Because the way we see it is very simply, if it's not operating according to the traditions of the fathers of the West, it really shouldn't be there anymore. It's not helping anyone. So really, it's that's kind of the choice people have to make. Do they want to deal with modernized, kind of ecumenist Western rite, or do they want to deal with the living tradition of the apostles and fathers?
Well, if they're part of RollCore MP to begin with, this is a they're already accumulating to becoming sort of like a more Russian version of the OCA at this point.
Yeah.
So I mean, what's the difference within that bounded narrative?
Did that kind of help Nikolai?
Beg your pardon?
The guy who was asking about.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, it does help a lot. And like I said earlier, the priest who brought me into World Orthodoxy, into RollCore MP, was one of Shaw's ordainees. Ordainees had to have a corrective ordination by Metropolitan Valerian later on.
Yeah, I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, we can talk about that later. I don't want to be.
No, I'm not. No, I don't name names.
But sorry, there's another question I have regarding Metropolia history specifically, and since Bishop Enoch is here and Father Slayton, you guys can help me with this. The RollCore MP parish next door to the one my wife and I just left was actually founded by Father Aidan Keller. I'm assuming he was formerly one of yours.
Where was this at? What state was this?
Austin, Texas.
Okay, there's a RollCore parish. Okay. I think I do. Okay, all right, yes. I knew who Father Aidan is, but I didn't know he founded a RollCore MP parish in Austin.
Well, that was where he went right after he left the monastery. Is that he kind of formed.
Well, he was in limbo for a few years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And all right. Okay.
Sorry, I'm trying to understand where he came from, because for us it's just, it's Father Aidan Hieromonk, and it's like, who is this person?
We had a diocese in Austin with Archbishop Valerian of Texas and a monastery there. Father Aidan was a monk of ours for a number of years. I don't even know how he was. I think he was there even before we joined Milan.
And there was a Western Rite ordainee that became an Eastern Rite. That's real near there too.
Yeah.
I think the city's called Lockhart. So.
It is. Yep.
Yeah.
But the point is that
well, Father Aidan actually knows. He actually is a genuine expert on to know what should be done with Western Rite. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I mean, and so there's there are certain things he is compromised on. Definitively,
like humanism.
I think he'll say
actually at Pope Towson's monastery now.
Yeah, I think he'll say things like he doesn't accept it, but what can he do? That same old line I've heard from so many people.
But his thing, he's become more of a Russophile.
Yeah, I mean, he learned to preach in
Russian. That was mandatory because he had to go to Jordanville and he had to learn Russian. And I remember a few years after he had left us, this was before I joined our synod, and he was talking about doing his first sermons in Russian, and I was like, wow, like this is the guy who had translated all these great Western Rite texts, and then next thing you know, he's like gotta learn Russian and bow his head, and he hadn't even been made a priest yet, and then finally they made him a priest once they saw he was completely and totally pliable. That's pretty sad.
Yeah, his parents sit there in Austin. Forgive me, Bishop. Go ahead.
He I think he has a genuine good knowledge of historic priesthood and Western Rite. I don't agree with him on all the points, but generally the points I don't agree with him on would be very minor issues that have to do with, he generally favored things like the full repetition of the offertory antiphon as opposed to off respond, and that's more or less a difference between different gradual books. So that's not really an actual genuine difference. So there were some things that I would.
He wasn't a fan of rhyme either.
That's idiosyncrasy of his hymns, because obviously the Western Rite hymns are not like Troparion.
No, they're not right, but they do rhyme in the original language.
Most of the time, most of the Latin hymns have a meter. They have a certain amount of syllables. They have a rhyme that goes with them, and he generally didn't translate them into rhymes. That's for some strange,
really minor stuff.
Very stylistic differences. Like, for example, his Old Serum Rite Missal is more or less textually the same as what we do, except we did our own translation. And he wanted to do his own translation for the monastery there. It's just that kind of stuff. So, I think he knows these issues. It's just like a lot of other people they thought, well, ROCOR joined the MP, and it's ROCOR, and why not?
Have you reached out to the Archbishop down there in Austin, Nikolai?
I haven't gotten around to it yet. Are you talking about Archbishop
Irene?
or?
Oh yeah, he's in communion with us. He's a good bishop.
Yeah, no, I haven't done it yet.
Is Archbishop Irenaeus is he in Austin?
No, he's about, I think, an hour away.
Liberty Hill, I believe. Right?
Liberty Hill, yeah.
Yeah.
Alexander Pashinsky asked in the chat, "Good evening, Father. Thoughts on the Cathedral of St. Markella in NYC and the Metropolitan?" That's an interesting question. I like the Cathedral of St. Markella. I think they do beautiful services there. They're kind of in charge for the big theophany walk to the Hudson River where they do the cross throwing. So it's kind of awesome. When you say the Metropolitan, I'm not sure what you mean, because technically, even though Metropolitan Demetrius is in charge in the United States, I think Metropolitan Pavlos is still alive and considered resident there, even though he doesn't celebrate. I don't think he does, because he had a stroke about 15 years ago. Maybe he helps out, but I guess he probably just sits there. So Metropolitan Pavlos, he had his own issues, but he was instrumental to the growth of true Orthodoxy in America. I have nothing negative to say about him. But yeah, I don't know that he's actually. I think he's kind of more like an emeritus there. St. Markella is a big church. I think I know it's got well over 100, possibly over 200 regular members. But I could be wrong there. But it's a pretty church. If it's close to you, I don't have any problems with it. You should visit all the true Orthodox churches you can. That's my view. Someone asked in the YouTube chat without a super chat, so I cannot put it on the screen. Father, off topic, but do you know any people in the church who spoke out against the Oriental Orthodox in contemporary times? Metropolitan Philaret of New York spoke against them in letters. We're kind of doing that now.
There's an account of St. John Maximovich penancing a man who was, I guess, in Egypt during the 1930s, and he was stuck there, and I don't know why, if he went to a Coptic church for 2 years or something like that, and he came and told St. John Maximovich that after he got back to Europe, and St. John said this is unacceptable, and you have to go to confession for it.
Yeah, and then there was also the case of Archbishop Averki, who ended up inadvertently there was a minor crypt chapel, and some Monophysites were like, we have no place to worship.
And he let them do their liturgy there.
Right, and they ended up having to re-bless the chapel, and it became
it caused a big explosion because people complained. Metropolitan St. Philaret said you can't do this. Archbishop Averki initially tried to defend it, and then eventually Archbishop Averki, after enough time, gave in and said, I shouldn't have done it, and re-blessed it. Because remember, there was the point in the letter that St. Philaret wrote to him where he says, what about when, like in the Coptic liturgy, their version of the liturgy, they have a point where they're supposed to do their elevation of the bread, all right? And he said numerous seminarians bow down as they would in Orthodox liturgy, which means they were in essence committing idolatry because no consecration took place.
Yeah.
All right? So this is a very serious issue and such.
Yeah, so that's kind of, hope that answers that.
I mean, the consistent problem with the modern Monophysite issue is, one, the Copts over and over again claim they're not Monophysites. They'll argue up and down they're not Monophysites, to the point where
we're Monophysites.
To the point where they will say things, oh, Christ is God and man, and he's just the one hypostasis. They won't say one hypostasis, two natures, but they'll use all this terminology to the point where people can be fooled into it. Maybe the Copts have fooled themselves into it to some extent. I'm not sure. And there's another a problem that happens with some Orthodox people, where they kind of look at externals. They say, oh, this priest has a black robe and he has a beard, and their incense smells like our incense, sort of like what happened with the Byzantine Unia in Ukraine. All right, like everything kind of looks the same. I mean, it doesn't with the Copts, but it looks enough the same, I guess. So they think, oh, it's kind of acceptable. It's a very shallow way of thinking. But I think as people begin to become more and more detached from the meaning of the Orthodox Christian faith and less adherent to fundamental dogmatic principles of the biblical tradition, they are taken more and more in by sort of superficial appearances. And, that's something that's dangerous for everybody all around.
And Father Antonio's notes in terms of the Liberty Hill versus Austin question, he said just north of it. So keep that in mind. So yeah, if you want to, Nikolai, that's you're always welcome there. Let's see here. So we've had Reader John speak, and Father Boniface, how's it going?
Okay, all right.
What's going on today?
Well, we had the celebration of Saint Mary Magdalene, her feast day, and just a beautiful celebration, and the liturgy was beautiful, and I had my one person there joining in, and so we're moving right along with his catechism. So we've got 2 Sundays under the belt, yeah, and so 2 more to go, and then the baptism. So that's great. And I visited my daughter up there in Tallahassee, so was a witness for the Orthodox Church there. So that was it, and so the hurricane did not come. Is out in the Gulf mostly, and we've got some rain, but otherwise it's been okay. So that's the latest from here in sunny but rainy Florida. Yeah.
Okay, well, and Father Antonio's notes that as a matter of fact, they'll be up there this coming weekend. So if you are visiting Liberty Hill to see Archbishop Bernays, you should see Father Antonio there in the altar, God willing. So let me see here, and what have we got? And for those confused about the St. Mary Magdalene references, today in the Western Rite is her feast day, so it's a big deal and it's a very beautiful text. Can anyone set a YouTube chat for only super chats? That would force everyone else here. There is no actual way to do that because
just so I can ask a question, when is the feast of St. Mary Magdalene? It's not July 22nd on the Eastern Eastern calendar.
Let me check.
I thought it was the same date.
It's not like a devoted feast. Is my point. Let me just see here. Hold on. Yeah, no, it's July 22nd.
Yeah, it's today. Yeah.
1 second here.
Anyway,
the hymnography is not, if I remember correctly, is complex though. Because just see here real quick.
Well, anyway, that's what it is.
Yeah, it's she's one of the myrrh bearers.
It is the same. It's
the same day, but it's not.
It is.
It's not. Well, I know it's the same day. It's just not as verbose. There's not the feast is a little bit more. Well, yeah, it was today. I know it was today, together with same focus. But
what is the rank? What is the rank of it in the Eastern calendar?
What do you mean? It's
of this the Saint Mary Magdalene. What is how do you rank your feast or ranked?
Well, today's Saint Mary Magdalene, focus, and the other. There's a lot of saints. No, it's not a major feast.
So we're at Orthros, you wouldn't have the 9 odes. It wouldn't be dedicated.
No, you always have 9 odes at Orthros.
But I'm just saying, but at Orthros, on the feast of Saint Magdalene, you'd have the sufficient hymns dedicated.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but that's not what I meant. What I meant is that in the hymnography in the West, a lot of the time, it's a lot more effusive when dealing with. There's a difference of. How do I put this? Emphasis. I feel like I'm.
Well, I'll take it. I mean, I understand. I was just wondering. I just did realize it was the same day. That's all. But it may be not as big a deal on that day. Okay. No big deal.
Yeah, I'm going to remind everyone here the tab exists. Probably they're unaware the tab exists. Remind everyone in the chat of Stream Chat tab. Yeah,
have you discussed the Gab update?
Oh, the Gab update. Wow. Okay. That is an interesting update to
now. Gab is like Facebook was 12 years ago or 15 years ago. In a good way.
Well, okay. Well, I mean, I'm not. Let me put it this way. I see the positives. I haven't been as effusive with praise on it because it still needs to get up there in terms of popularity. But Gab issued an update that made it especially for pro members to they become much more visible than previously, which is kind of awesome. And it allows for that to it allows for people to engage more. It's not as again, it's still Gab. I mean, I like Gab and I use it, and I like the fact that it's got increased engagement. But a lot of people, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. They feel very uncomfortable with it because, so it's to me it's a big update, and it has shown more visibility, and a lot more people reacted to us. A lot more people angry about Orthodox posts, which was nice. It was good to have some arguments there.
One guy on Gap said that with the new update, it's like the old days. Schizos show up in your comments a lot more often.
Yeah.
So
and they did.
And I have like this one post that, I mean, obviously what it means essentially is that you're a lot more visible instead of just like you're not shouting into the void. So there's like one post where it became like 700 likes. And it was essentially essentially the account of Saint Nicola of Saint Kirill, the evangelizer and the apostle to the Slavs, enlightener of the Slavs. He was having his debate with the Muslims, and people like it, and but then you have these dozens of comments from, the various atheists who show up in the comments, and the crazed Christogenea people, and various other heresies, and they don't like it, but there are a lot of like really crazed white supremacists who hate Christianity.
Well, they're pagans.
Well, they're atheists, really, but
good evening, TTC.
So a lot of those people there. But anyway, point is that the truth gets out nevertheless, and I think that's scary to the devil, obviously. So anyway, that's just a minor point. Okay, what other topics are to discuss, Father?
Well, as it stands right now, I don't see any topics. Let me see here. But I'm going to just go through here. Give me just a moment. Just want to see one thing. Because I was part of the reason why I kind of hesitated. How do I put this? Let me see if I can explain. Because I feel bad talking about the Mary Magdalene thing because there was some confusion there. Because there is like kind of a much more dedicated feast in the West, and it's you had sent out all the texts for it, and so I don't want to imply that she's treated ordinarily in the Eastern Rite. It's not that. It's just that. How do I put this? It was much more like a standard Sunday. Okay. But anyway, let me see here. But I don't see any questions. It looks like Reader John dropped off.
Well, we're also
having some internet issues.
Tonight we begin the celebration, and tomorrow is of Saint Apollinaris. He was a martyr. Okay. He was I believe the first bishop of Ravenna.
Yeah, the higher martyr Apollinaris. Yes. See, now tomorrow that would be that's like 5th place on my list. It's more for the Prochaev icon, the Martyrs Trophimus, Theophilus.
It's still commemorated though.
Yeah, he's in there somewhere, but that's my point.
Yes.
You can't celebrate her alone. That's true, Father Antonios. I do know that, but I try to read the list because I just assume that's what you're supposed to do. I generally.
In fact, the founding of the See of Ravenna by Saint Apollinaris was one of the big points why the Church of Ravenna was able to claim autocephaly for centuries, until it was finally broken up and destroyed in the 11th and 12th century and such. So,
okay, so I'm getting more questions. People, I got a stream chat set up, so it's just for chats in the stream, so people can do other chats where they don't have to be on the stream. Like this is it's supposed to be a chat for just 24/7 whenever. To answer, ask Ludika the earlier question. Last time I asked Ludika the stupid question about the Last Judgment. What I really wanted to ask was, what does "we are not saved alone" mean? I gave my take on the answer. How would you take that?
I'm confused. What is the question?
what does "we are not saved alone" mean? I assume that meant it's like it's an anti-Pelagian statement. We're not saved by our own selves, but through the grace of God.
We are not saved alone. I think I've often heard some Orthodox people say that in the context that you have to go to church. You can't forsake the assembly. Like St. Paul says, don't forsake the assembling of yourselves. You can't.
Yeah,
your religion isn't just a case of pure individuality and individualism.
Yep.
And that if you're part of that, if you repent, if you're part of the if you're baptized, part of the body of Christ in the church, that you are connected with every single other Orthodox Christian.
Okay.
And so obviously, you're helping them. I think that's what it means. I mean, you cannot simply say, I don't want to go to church no more and I'll do everything on my own, because that's tantamount to apostasy. So.
Okay, John MC says Basilica di San Apollinare in Classe Ravenna is very beautiful. I'd love to return there someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
It was built by I think that was the Justinian. That was built in the 500s by the Emperor Saint Justinian, I believe. There were some older churches there, but they missed. During some time in the 1600s, with the rest of the Counter Reformation movement, they took down all the chancel, the Templon screens that are in that church. So,
I'm thinking maybe I can do a members only chat. I don't know. Maybe that's possible. That would force everyone to the cafe. Somebody asked in the regular chat, okay, the stream chat was an experiment. Next week, there just won't be a stream chat. I'll just go back to what I was doing. Obviously, this is too much. Good evening, Liturgical, Father Joseph, and Father Boniface. Would you mind giving your impressions about Joanna Higginbotham's blogs? Are they a safe source of true Orthodox information? The overwhelming majority of Joanna Higginbotham's blogs and stuff are somebody else's material. So, yeah, that's fine. I think a lot of her opinions are sometimes okay and sometimes terrifyingly wrong. So I would just say, as long as it's like something like she's putting up Russia's catacomb saints or sermons of this or that. I mean, she doesn't like forge them or anything. So yeah, no, her stuff is fine. Just if you see there's a weird opinion, just make sure it's not just her writing it and it's something else. Let me see here. Let me think here. I'm not seeing any questions. I'm going to check the Gab. Has been busy, but mostly people are seeing things en masse that are interesting to them. I haven't seen anyone from Gab here. Yeah, if someone's come from Gab, let us know. If you have questions, that's fine too. Let me see here. Other than that, yeah. Yeah, you did a stream this week as well, Vladika.
Yeah, I did. I believe I did. I read. We've completed reading the reading of book 1 of Saint Vigilius, the Bishop of Tapsus' Against Eutyches and Nestorius, 5 books in defense of the Synod of Chalcedon. So we completed that, and I have to translate book 2. And as soon as I do that, on the Traditional Western Orthodoxy channel, we'll begin reading that. But on Monday, we're going to start the Role of Saint Benedict reading, and me and Father Boniface are going to discuss that, and go through some of the commentaries by Abbot Smaragdus and a few others from the early.
Okay, so first, Cafe Reader 1, Father Simeon wrote, Joanna Higginbotham seems sectarian to me. Yeah, her personal stuff is very sectarian. Niles the New writes, the only thing you can do by yourself is go to hell. All the virtues require someone else. You can't be obedient without someone to be obedient to. You can't be loving without someone to love, etc. But however, you can be prideful, greedy, lustful, alone. However,
you can be a hermit. I mean, there are theoretically
Saint Mary of Egypt, was by herself.
But she had the angels and the saints. So right. Even then, I think the point of that statement and the way some have used it is, you have to take communion, you have to go to confession, you have to be part of if you can be, be part of the living Orthodox community. It's not the same as like you got to, I don't know, if you're like in Antarctica or I don't know where now you have to drive 4 or 5 hours. That doesn't mean you're not going to be saved if you have to drive 4 or 5 hours and you're only going to be able to go to church 10 times a year or something like that. It's so. But that's extenuating circumstances. I mean, you can think of a case in 19th century Russia, pre-revolutionary Russia, where there was a church everywhere, more or less, If someone says, "I'm not going to church," I mean that symbolizes something wrong happening in their spiritual life. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, that answers that. Let me think here. Okay. I'm not seeing anything else here. Okay, so just keeping the chat here. We're at the 1 hour and 10-minute mark, and I am trying here to. There's too many screens to maintain. Hold on. Okay, that looks back to normal. So yeah, other than that, it's we haven't we had some interesting questions for today, and we did get to go over that discussion there on the Crucible. And some we've had, actually we've had a few good questions. I'm surprised at how kind of this actually rolled pretty well in terms of things going. I will get rid of the stream chat, so now's the new. Just you can put it in general next time. That turned out to be overcomplicating something. But outside of that, let me see here. Now, Joseph Saad, again, writing in the YouTube chat, we would prefer super chat. We would prefer, a members chat, or we would prefer you chat in the cafe, so it'll be on the screen. But your question, of course, is, well, please speak on why the Coptic Miaphysites aren't Orthodox. And Cloister asks, is the path of the hermit even an option anymore, Vladika?
Well, I'll answer that before you go, and let you do the Coptic one.
I can actually just put up what you had talked about this week.
Sure.
Which I think would...
the path of the hermit, that can happen. Sure. It's just I think there are some. Yeah, I think it's still an option today.
Maybe sometimes people come in to be a hermit and they find themselves founding a monastery.
Yeah, very rarely. Yeah, exactly. Well, that's actually happened in a number of cases. Like Saint Giles, who was originally a priest in Greece in the 600s, Galasios. He left. He was a higher monk there. He left because he worked miracles, and he fled to France around the year 600, and he became a hermit. And eventually, he was discovered, and a monastery grew up around him. But I think it is. But to be a true hermit, you probably not a lot of people can do that. Let's just put it like that. Say if you read the Role of Saint Benedict, he talks a little bit about this, and he says that sort of anchorites, which is what people may be thinking of, that's like the stage of monasticism that oftentimes is, in many ways, if it's used correctly, is the most perfect. But very rarely are people able to go out, live in the woods by themselves or in the desert and such. So, I mean, like St. Paul of Thebes, obvious example. But, so I do think it still is an option, but it's always been very rare in relative terms.
Yeah.
But remember, so they reject the Council of Chalcedon, the Copts do. And if you reject the Council of Chalcedon, then and you anathematize Saint Leo the Great, and you say that Saint Gennadios of Constantinople in the 470s was a heretic, I mean, to me that lends to the argument that you fall under the anathemas of Chalcedon and of the subsequent councils. So
okay, Nikolai is back. And so next up, Ludik, I'm actually just going to put your video on 1.25 because it is fairly short. It's only about 20 minutes long.
Are we going to listen to it?
Huh?
Are we going to listen to it?
Yeah.
Okay.
After Nikolai's question, because I think he wants a substantive answer.
Go right ahead. It's my question.
No. It's going to be like a 15, 20-minute video.
Gotcha. Sorry, I had to jump off to help with putting my daughter to bed.
Sure.
So to go back to the Father Aidan Keller question, I know the man, and this is why I keep bringing him up. So I was trying to figure out as I move into the true Orthodox churches, how do we deal, just as a general rule, emotionally with the lies that are told about the true Orthodox. So I asked Father Aidan about his involvement previously with the Metropolia, personally, because he was the priest next door for a long time, and he just denies it outright, claiming he was with a totally different group. And it's like, how do we deal emotionally and like get to the root of that and dealing with their dishonesty, if that's a specific enough question?
Well, to be honest, you deal with it as a human, remembering that they're other humans. There was a priest, I won't mention his name, but when I had the NFTU Discord, somebody mentioned him. And I said, oh, yeah, he used to be with us. Tell him I said hi. And the guy's response was, well, he said I should stay away from you because you're evil. And I was like, oh, well, that's nice. But at the very least, he came out and said what he really thought, which I thought was horrible because we were on speaking terms when he left. But no, he said I was very dangerous and stay away from me. And so the point is that, how do you deal with it when people say that? I've had people I thought were friends, and then I find out that they've said horrible things about me. Mm-hmm. That's just as true when it's, your synod. That's just as true when it's your church and your bishops. Of course, you have a right to be emotional about it, but at the same time, you have to remember that there are things that drive people. Not just hatred, but sometimes fear, sometimes insecurity. In Father Aidan's case, he was very angry at his abbot. Over something that happened. And it was not necessarily scandalous in the history of monasticism, but in the history of the modern era, sometimes people get horrified. We want to get specific. Traditionally in monasteries, occasionally, abbots would administer some form of corporal punishment. They may have done that with other members of the Brotherhood, or sometimes it could just be as simple as a slap in the face. But the point is that those things can horrify people who aren't used to it. Sure. And I'm not saying that that's what happened in this case. But ultimately, then if a person leaves, they have what they consider to be some sort of self-justification, regardless of whether or not it's truly a valid justification. Mm-hmm. And so we have to keep in mind that the person who reviles us is a human who thinks he's doing the right thing by reviling us. Very few people, especially people who are at least somewhat properly disposed to Christ, are acting in a truly mendacious and vindictive manner. Now, that again, with dealing with leadership, people like that, I mean, at this point, with what Father Aidan knows, it's a little different. It's been 20 years. He's seen the ecumenism. He has less and less of an excuse than he did when he left in, say, 2009 or 2006 or 5 or something. Okay. So the point is, what's the excuse now seeing the rampant ecumenism? What's the excuse now experiencing it firsthand?
Well, it's an interesting question with him, Father, because it's, he's at Metropolitan Jonah's Monastery now, and he's doing your guys' serum, right? And it's kind of one of these things for me where this is kind of actually how I found you guys initially, because, his serum questions obviously lead to y'all. And it's an interesting thing. So thank you, Father.
He's doing an intentionally Byzantinized version of it, by the way, to make himself. I've seen it, to make himself look less offensive to the people he wants to ingratiate himself to.
Well, what do you mean by less more Byzantinized? Because I remember when we watched that video.
I can tell you. First off, he put the table of oblation on the left side. He sensed the gifts. He almost like he was imitating the prosthesis, aspects of the prosthesis.
Yeah.
There was, I'd have to go through it again, but there was 2 or 3 things that just struck me wrong. I'm not saying it's not Western Rite. It's just obviously, but I've always I don't know. I don't want to get too much into it because it doesn't matter at this point. It's irrelevant.
Bishop Enoch, is there a video link to where this can be found so that I can see it? I'm just curious.
Yeah, somewhere. I don't know. It's somewhere on YouTube.
Major Vades asks, what year did Trump convert to Judaism? Please ask him. I'm not aware that he did. So in any case, yeah, I don't have a comment on that. TTC says, "Lol, what?" I would agree. All right.
But Nikolai, what I would say is, don't get obsessed. This is what I'm going to partially say. Don't get upset if you're leaving to become true Orthodox. Don't necessarily get obsessed with, arguing with everybody who you're leaving behind, because you're going to be there for months about it, and you can say what I'm doing is right and that it is right, but I don't know. That's just my view about it. Because when Father Aiden, I remember having arguments with him years ago, and it's just at a certain point it didn't matter.
Sure.
Thank you for that, Bishop. And it's similar to other people. Like I know Father Joseph, you told me a story years ago that there was one Roquefort priest in the 90s who was always very much against the union. Then he said someday he suddenly woke up one day and literally he said, "I now was no longer against the union."
Yeah.
And it was like almost like something had switched in their brain.
Yeah. I saw anti-unionists in Roquefort suddenly turn and basically treat and other anti-unionists like they were like deceitful liars. It was just bizarre. The whole thing. It's almost like watching mass delusion happen. It's just so strange. Tikon F says Johanna Higginbotham's quote-unquote library is great. I guess. I mean, the stuff that slanders about us, I don't find it that great. But, the good stuff is good. But other than that, let me see here. Reader John's back. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Bishop, for that.
I've gone through the same thing you're going through.
I appreciate that.
15, 16, 17 years ago.
And I'm not trying to make it a personal session. It's just I'm trying to understand relationally the people who are in this area.
Oh,
right?
okay. Okay. No, I understand. I'm just saying you gotta always be a little bit careful about it, though.
Sure. And last
you don't want to come off as like being like some obsessive guy trying to get dirt on people or something.
No, of course. I'm just trying to understand the individuals. Forgive me, Bishop Enoch. Last question. The Liber Pontificalis, which volume do you recommend getting into first?
I recommend the version, the early. Are you talking about like one to buy or one to what are you talking about exactly?
Just to go through to read.
Now, if you go on Google Books, the free view or Internet Archive, and you type in Liber Pontificalis, and I'll do that right as I'm talking to you. I'm more familiar with Google Books and Internet Archive because I can search Google Books better. So if you type in Liber Pontificalis on Google Books and you hit full view, the first one that comes up should say the Book of the Popes. And let me see if this is, and it says To the Pontificate of Gregory I, translated by Louise Ropes Loomis. And I think that's a very good introduction. There is if you want to get to the Liber Pontificalis Lives of the Popes after that, you have to buy those. They're translated.
Sure.
You can get them for like $10 off Amazon probably or something like that.
Noted.
I think Loomis did a very good job because he used like early manuscripts to compile it, and he actually, if you look in the text, sometimes you'll see a bifurcated page. And that's because he's comparing two different manuscripts. One has a little bit more than another, or such. So those are pretty good early biographical texts. In fact, there are certain things in them that, like Loomis and others, I think, and maybe some others who write about like these ancient Western liturgical questions, they don't quite understand if they don't understand ancient Western Rite. For example, there's a reference that to Pope Saint Celestine in like 420. Confirming the rule, I think, that the entire Psalter should be recited prior to Mass. And a lot of people thought, what does that mean? I mean, and there's this idea that he invented the introit or something like that. But I don't think that's at all what that's not what they're talking about. Because if you read the Regularis Concordia, which we did on my Western Orthodoxy channel read through, Father Boniface and I, it talks about how during the Holy Triduum, which we do at the monastery, try to do this custom at the monastery here, after prime or the first hour, so like on Holy Thursday, Holy Friday, Holy Saturday, but before terce, etc., the entire Psalter on those 3 days of Holy Week Holy Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, is supposed to be recited by the monks. All right. And I have read other material that indicates that that was also an ancient basilican usage, going back to antiquity and such. So I think the Liber Pontificalis, those early first millennial lives of the popes, they can, at the very least, they will tell you what somebody in the 500s thought about an issue. Even if you want to say, oh, maybe they got something wrong about Pope St. Telesphorus in 170 or whatever, they will at least tell you what the tradition was current at the time about something. So I think that's a good text, and you can find a lot of interesting like apologetic material. Like, for example, you look at the Anastasius II around 490, late 490s, and right there you have if you read the short entry for Pope Anastasius II in the 490s, it totally negates the idea of papal infallibility, because what happens is that there was a deacon from Thessalonica who came to Rome, and Anastasius II allowed him to serve at Mass. Well, why is that a problem? Well, because at that point, the Western Orthodox were not in communion with the Eastern Church because of the Akakian schism. Because Acacius of Constantinople and the others have basically said that you don't have to accept Chalcedon. And St. Felix and St. Gelasius and others freaked out, quite rightly, all right, when that happened. And so Anastasius is like, well, let's be more, Pope Anastasius II thought, well, let's be a little bit nicer and more cordial. So he lets this deacon who was under the, so-called Akakians serve at Mass. And the Roman clergy are like, no, we're not this, you've apostatized. All right. They totally didn't want to have anything to do with him. And it caused this major problem. In fact, I could probably read from the section real quick, so we could actually give that as an example. And
where do you find that, Bishop Enoch? Would you recommend staying away from the Raymond Davis translations of the Liber Pontificalis and stick with the Lunas version?
The Raymond Davis, hold on, that's the ones that's he's the only one who's translated the one from the 600s and 700s, I believe.
Okay.
I mean, I don't necessarily know. I don't think he's done. Have you heard something bad about it, or?
No, I'm asking you. It's
no. I didn't see any real issue about his translation.
Perfect.
So
it's usually the footnotes where the problems lie.
Yeah. So what I would recommend is that if he says something in a footnote, and this means this, maybe not. I'd read the text myself before I go into that level. But again, so if you go to page of that text, page 114 on the Google book page, it says the following: it says, Anastasius II, by nationality a Roman, son of Peter from the 5th district, Talma occupied the see for 1 year, 11 months, and 24 days. He was bishop at the time of Theodoric, who was the Ostrogothic king of Italy. He set up the Confession of Blessed Lawrence, as the martyr weighing 80 pounds, a confessio, sort of like a large elevated platform. At that time, many of the clergy and the priests withdrew themselves from communion with him, because without consulting the priests or the bishops or the clergy of all the Catholic Church, he had communicated with a deacon of Thessalonica, Photinus, by name, who was of the party of Acacius, and because he desired secretly to reinstate Acacius and could not, and he was struck dead by divine will. So whoever wrote that obviously did not believe in papal supreme infallibility.
Oh, that would make Pine Sap angry.
Yes, because remember, he's saying that this Pope Anastasius was secretly going to make a deal with Acacius, that the bishops and priests of the church basically withdrew from communion with him, and all the rest. So, I mean, there were embarrassing things in the Liber Pontificalis for papism. I would also, if you're interested, I'd also recommend, if you ever get a find a used copy of it, the Liber Pontificalis of the Church of Ravenna. And that gives you the list of that was written by I cannot remember the name of the priest. His name escapes me at the moment. Who talks about Pontificalis Ravenna, Agnellus. Okay, so Agnellus of Ravenna, he wrote that book around like 850 maybe, or maybe 830 or something like that. I think he died 830, and it's an excellent book, and especially the section that deal with Archbishop Maurus of Ravenna in the 600s, because you see that there was a conflict between the Church of Ravenna and the Church of Rome at that point, in which the Archbishop of Ravenna basically said, look, we're talking about St. Apollinaris. We're commemorating him beginning tonight and then tomorrow, okay? And he's the first bishop of Ravenna. He was a disciple, I think, of St. Peter. And Archbishop Maurus of Ravenna basically told the Pope at the time, Vitalian, I think, in the 680, 670, he said, look, Ravenna is an autocephalous church. We do not have to send our bishop to Rome to be consecrated by the Pope. All right, we're not an autonomous church, in other words, like how people think about that. All right, that we can have our local bishops or consecrate our own archbishop. All right, and so there's a big speech by Archbishop Maurus in that text that shows you sort of what like a Western Orthodox archbishop at the time, if he felt a Roman patriarch became too domineering, how they would react to that and such. Although, in his defense, Pope Vitalian seemed to be arguing on legal precedent. He seemed to be arguing that he had the right to consecrate Ravenna on the basis that the Roman Patriarchate had the right to consecrate all sort of like archbishops in the West. And by archbishop at the time, by the way, they did not mean how we think of like because of that time how they rake the system. The actual classical system the ecumenical councils followed is this: you have bishop. A group of bishops form a province. The head bishop is called the metropolitan bishop. Of those metropolitan provinces, they're grouped together maybe 3, 4, 5 provinces, and the head metropolitan of those provinces is called an archbishop. All right. Now later in church history, these titles kind of got turned around, like and such like that. But theoretically, an archbishop is supposed to be a metropolitan who has seniority over other bishops. So Vitalian in Rome was claiming, well, the Roman Patriarchate encompasses the West, and because of that, we have to at least approve everyone's election or something like that, because they're sort of like autonomous churches under Rome is how they thought of it. But that was sort of that was disputed and by many of these local churches over time. Like Milan would do it. Spain, for example, constantly did it. There was at one point in which the Spanish church basically did not recognize the Roman popes for like 120 years, simply because the Spanish said it's so corrupt in Rome during the like 890s, no one knows who the legitimate pope is.
Nobody talks about that. Then.
Yeah, exactly. It's called because look, if they're killing each other, the other Western bishops you're not going to have an argument about papacy. It's just going to be there's nothing legitimate to begin with. And I think there was at one point the Archbishop of Toledo maybe had reestablished communion with Rome around 1020, but there was a schism over that and such. And so that's sort of the background actually to like, aspects of the Great Schism, where there wasn't really there was never really a unified. There was a Latin church in the sense of people used Latin, and they had sort of liturgical rituals that were very similar. All right, and they had a great respect for the concept of the Bishop of Rome, mainly because St. Peter's relics are there. All right, but that did not necessarily translate into the Bishop of Rome orders you to do something. You have to do it, because there's the famous case of St. Dunstan in the 960s, in which the Pope Octavian, or so-called John the 12th, who was one of the worst, probably up there with the Borgias, he was deposed actually in 963 by the German emperor and the Italian bishops. He ordered St. Dunstan to allow a man St. Dunstan had excommunicated a nobleman for incest because he had married his stepmother or something like that. And St. Dunstan was like, no, you cannot marry your stepmother. This is like right out of 1 Corinthians or 2 Corinthians that was going on. And so this nobleman had apparently sent money to Rome and got John the 12th to send the letter to St. Dunstan saying you have to allow him to take communion. St. Dunstan's view was that, no. When the man does penance, then I'll obey the Lord Pope, he said. In other words, once he does what he's supposed to do.
Thank you, Bishop Enoch. I've got to sign off.
Okay, I'm just saying there's
recommendations. Thank you, fathers.
If you want to contact me, contact Father Joseph. He can give you my email. There's a lot of other books I could recommend for you.
Thank you so much, Bishop. Fathers. Thank you for your time.
You're muted, Father Joseph.
I'm unmuted.
Okay.
We got a bunch of other questions, so we're going to try to go through them. As we mentioned, If you want to, get your comment on the screen while at the same time having us respond to it, we highly recommend going to the Afrosinos Cafe at afrosinoscafe.com and click on the chat. It is free, and we like having things up there. If you want to get a chat in from YouTube, I will read them, but if you want it on the screen, I ask for a super chat or members only. Okay, the first question that we got, well, first off, Anonymous Man, you're back in you went back to the YouTube chat, I guess. But anyway, you popped back in, you said Christ has two natures in one hypostasis. Tell me if that is wording it correctly. It is. Another way is Christ has two natures in one person because of the nature of the word persona as opposed to hypostasis. What he doesn't have is two natures in one nature. So just because that wouldn't make any sense.
Or one feces.
Yeah. And so Rollin 1334 says, do any of the true Orthodox think Father Seraphim Rose can be venerated as saint at any point in time? I would say that is increasingly a possibility. His veneration has grown, and more importantly, especially in the last year, a lot has been rediscovered about his own teachings concerning World Orthodoxy and ecumenism that was actually edited out by people in the Serbian Patriarchate, etc.
Oh yes. The
So
whole paragraph.
It's possible. I mean, I don't know. It just depends on whether that cultist is bait. I mean, the problem is that whenever you're talking about recent saints, the real question becomes, are people recognizing this as a holy person just as naturally, or are they recognizing it as someone they are emotionally attached to? And emotional attachment is not how saints are made. As a matter of fact, most of the glorifications that have happened of late had people opposing them.
Remember Saint Seraphim, a large amount of many of the Russian bishops opposed the glorification of Saint Seraphim.
And Saint John.
Yes, because in Saint Seraphim's case, they thought that this would enshrine sort of a peasant spirituality. I mean, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm not quite sure what they're talking about there. But, but ultimately that was pushed through by a number of Orthodox bishops and the Tsar at the time, St. Nicholas.
And then St. John of Kronstadt, because of, I guess that was his political affiliations.
Yeah.
Well, the whole claim about the Black Hundreds and things like that.
Yeah.
Which he was with them, but then that whole thing broke, which happens oftentimes with a lot of right-wing organizations that are nationalists. They fraction and they go into there's all this weird extreme group. There was one that broke away, wanted to be like neo-pagan and such, and St. John was like, he can't have anything more to do with that and such. So.
And then St. John of Shanghai and San Francisco.
Yeah.
Some were kicking and screaming until 94.
I remember reading something from 95. Not that I read it at 95, but it was written from the 90s, and they mentioned that there was this attempt in the run up to the glorification of St. John Maximovich to sort of whitewash what people had done to St. John.
Yeah.
That they wanted because a lot of those guys were still alive at the time.
Yeah.
All right. And they wanted to sort of forget how everyone had slandered him, had said terrible things about him, had lied about him. And one thing
still goes on today. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Let me see here. Father Simeon writes, I imagine few are aware there were patriarchs in the West, as in Milan, Spain, Ravenna, etc. Yeah. Even if in some cases they weren't given patriarchal rank, they de facto had that.
There were about maybe 5 or 6 documents from the first millennium in which the Church of Lyon used the time Patriarch of Lyon. Because the connection through St. Irenaeus and St. John and things like that.
Now, Roland 1334 asks, what happened to the Little Western Orthodox Church in New York? It says, Father Deacon Joseph, I've been a priest for a year. I'm a terrible priest. I don't keep up with things as well as I should. I speed through services sometimes, and sometimes I do less than I'm supposed to. So maybe I don't know. Maybe Father Deacon's more accurate. But in any case, what happened to it? Well, if you've read my book on the matter, where he kind of stopped trusting us and stopped talking to us, basically he kind of didn't want anything to do with us after a mistake I made. And he didn't really want to talk to anyone, so he kind of went into isolation. He passed on.
Patricio, right?
Yeah, Father Patricio. He passed on about 10 maybe 10, 11 years ago. His nephew, who was a Jehovah's Witness, was going to get the property. He got the property, and it is currently on the market. I think they want something like $3.4 million for the church. Really sad story, but let me see here. I'm going to skip the Trump stuff. Yeah, it was a beautiful church, and it's tragic that it went down the way it did. Let me see here. Let Go 93 says at 36-minute marks, maybe on another broadcast, this video could be discussed. I understand that their knowledge is incorrect in the history of the true account of the church. I'd have to look at the video. I did find it, so I will put it up, and we'll try to see if we can figure this out live. Anonymous Man says, I know he's cool, so what is the heck is up with people trying to rehabilitate Origin? Yeah, that's people like David Bentley Hart and Alexander Golitsyn, unfortunately.
Even though he's anathematized by numerous
councils.
He's
anathematized by name in the Fifth Ecumenical Council.
And then successive councils.
Father Simeon points out, it's unfortunate to see icons of Father Seraphim Holders with halo, only the glorified have a honographic halo. There was one diocese of the Georgian Patriarchate which has glorified him, but to my knowledge, that hasn't been accepted by the rest of the synod. Let me see here. Atomic Lead says, or rather down there with the Borgias. I have a feeling that's probably a reference to an earlier commentary. DTC said, I have some land reps today. That's great. So corrupt in Rome in the 890s, also in the 1890s and 1980s, and even more now that can be imagined. Plus that changed. Yeah, but at least Rome in the 890s was Orthodox.
They just had a lot of terrible people.
Yeah.
Now John the 12th, he died. Here's the story about that. We've talked about it on this program before. He was so disliked and so scandalous in his morality that the Emperor Otto showed up with the army. And John was like, "Oh, well, I'll reform," and then he leaves it away. So he comes back again, I believe, and eventually they have a battle and they defeat him in battle. And then John the 12th sort of retreats to a fortified position of the city because Rome is like a ruin by this time. They can claim it had like 50,000 people in it, but the city's made to have 1 million people in it. But everything is stone buildings, so you could fortify different positions with rubble. So they hold a synod in Romans 963, and John the 12th is deposed, and they elect Leo the 8th, who actually was probably one of the better ones of the 10th century. Had moral scandals. So anyway, what happens is Octavian, or John the 12th, still claims to be Pope, and a few days later, a man walks into his house and he finds John the 12th in the bed with his wife, and he gets in a big fight with him. And he hits him in the head with like a hammer or something. And, Octavian, or John the 12th, dies 3 days later. Well-known story in the 10th century. It illustrates how bad many of these figures... I mean, there were different people claiming to be popes all the time. There's the famous statement from the Council of Orleans in like 980 or 990s, where Archbishop Arnulf of Orleans basically says that we, don't really know who the Pope is, and we don't really care.
What was that bishop that I forget which Western bishop basically said stay away from Rome?
Arnulf of Orleans, I believe it was. The famous speech he gave about that. It's like 20 pages. And because what was happening is they were bringing up there were people in Rome trying to bring up the Pseudo Isidorian decretals at the time, and the French bishop was like, "We've never heard of this stuff." This doesn't seem right about this. And then they said, look, even if this is true, it wouldn't mean we'd have to obey it. But if it is, we'd at least expect, if you're saying that, St. Leo the Great said this, can we at least get a St. Leo the Great to actually say it to us? So, that was, there was, various arguments and such.
Now, Anonymous Man 115 asks, do you think the reason that St. Seraphim, I assume you're referring to Father Seraphim, hasn't been formally glorified is because what he wrote against ecumenism, world orthodoxy, etc. That wouldn't stop any of us from glorifying him. The reason has been that there hasn't been a formal petition for occultists. There are true Orthodox who do not have a high opinion of Father Seraphim because of his early life. But, I mean, those things may pass over time, and he may well be glorified.
Well, it's so
Remember, there's also people going to say that he wasn't really Orthodox. They'll say that he was chrismated, he wasn't received by baptism, therefore he was, at best sort of like a non-catechumen catechumen. I mean, I've heard people,
which I think is a terrible argument.
It's insane. It's crazy. Yeah, St. John. I think St. John Maximus was chrismated. So was St. John simply just this incompetent buffoon who, maybe there are people.
Well, that's ultimately the rabbit hole that people don't want to go down, but they have to if they want to understand.
I mean, it would lead to all kinds of crazy conclusions if you don't leave room for economy, at least in some cases, because then at that point, Metron Vitali was never ordained a priest because he was ordained a deacon and priest by guess who? Metron Seraphim Lade, who was a Lutheran who was chrismated in the pre-revolutionary Russian Church.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now
I've heard people say crazy things about that too. So
all right, so to answer Lecco 33's question, because he says that apparently around 1536, I have 36 minutes. I have not watched this, so we're gonna put this up in just a moment. And we're going to take a look to see what is going on in minute 36 that is so questionable. St. Theodosius of Kiev also skating stuff against the Latins. Yeah, but that's not bad. Give me one moment.
Reader John had something to say, though, right?
I had a random question. You know how we talk about Rome when they dispensed with the filioque and they put the correct creed on the silver tablets?
Yes.
Do we know what happened to those silver tablets?
Aren't they still up?
No.
No, because I've been there.
Peter Damian in the 11th century mentions them as still being there in the 1080s.
Yeah, because I've been there a few times and I can't find it.
Well, you have to remember those silver tablets were put in Old St. Peter's Basilica. That was long torn down. And even before they tore it down in the 1510, 1520, they removed everything out of it, and we don't even know what happened to half of the stuff they took out of it. If you ever see, there's a famous painting done by Brewer, who is an architectural historian, who did this well-known painting of what Old St. Peter's looked like, and because he did inventories and things like that, half that stuff is missing. I suspect they probably took it out probably during the 11th or 12th century because it's going to be embarrassing. To say the least, because it's not just Greek, it's in Latin on the other side. Yeah, it's sort of like Ivo Chartres in 1100 saying that the Eighth Ecumenical Council is the council presided over by St. Photius. Mm-hmm. That's kind of embarrassing, so they eventually had to forget about that and claim the Robber Council of 869 was the Eighth Council and such. So,
okay. Now, Cloister writes, I personally feel if there's any hesitation about its glorification, it is due to the scandal surrounding Father Herman. That would be brought up again, and people would not resurrect dirty laundry. That is possible.
We have to also remember there can be cases of people who were Orthodox clergy and that were monks that lived all right, good lives, and they wrote good things. But that doesn't mean everybody is glorified as a saint too.
Right. That's also true. It may be in a generation. You just never know.
I mean, for example. Archimandrite Constantine Zaitsev wrote some really good stuff. But
either Father Boniface is here twice, or that's another Father Boniface.
Okay.
I'm cloned myself.
Okay. Should I get rid of the other one?
Well, it depends what the other one's cooking.
Sure.
What is the other one going to say, though?
Yeah, what's he cooking for dinner?
I'm confused. I'm bipolar now, and my imaginary self is arguing with me.
He's turned into a literal Nestorian version of Father Boniface.
Oh no!
There are two
persons. Now two different persons.
There are two persons.
Wow.
In Father Boniface.
No.
I'm getting confused.
Exactly.
I don't know what to do here.
But is it
it's the phone.
Is it the same Usia?
It's this new technology. It's causing me to go bipolar.
And Father Simeon says, St. Augustine said every saint has a past and every sinner has a future. Very true. Let's see here. Nikolai says twice as many sorghum pancakes.
Okay, wait. So that says that's from a genuine Orthodoxy channel, it's called?
Yeah, this looks like we're going to take a look here.
Is this the German guy?
Possibly. This was actually a conference held in Toronto, held by the Holy Theotokos Convent in Cedar Valley, Canada. Hierodeacon Hieronymus spoke on the history of the genuine Orthodox Church of Greece to see where we are today. and he says that there's some sort of error in minute 36 that was completely wrong. I have no idea what that is, but we're about to find out.
All right.
So let's play it and see what he says.
By the faithful themselves. No one is saying or can say that we are perfect or we haven't done something wrong. The church has always had struggles. But these days, our focus should be on struggling against ecumenism and not each other, something we fear which is happening with the Callinicos Synod. This brings me to furthering my point on the issue of reordinations, but on the level of the priesthood also. In other words, if one of our priests is to leave us and venture over to the Synod of Callinicos, he must be prepared to be ordained a priest again, since, at least on paper, that synod does not recognize our priesthood. Now, if some priest from the new calendar were to join them, that priest will be given a forgiveness prayer without any issue. Let us set aside the obvious blasphemy against the Holy Spirit being committed there and just simply think of the way they view us and then the way they view the new calendars. And that thought should frighten us and any serious Orthodox Christian. These were the reasons the Metropolitan Ephraim halted the union with Archbishop.
Oh, it's Hockna.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I think I think we can clearly see what he's talking about here. Yeah. That is something that.
Why does Hockna always never say in their video descriptions that it's Hockna? They always there's something weird about that. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, this is. I don't think this is Hockna. I'm pretty sure this is the Macarian Synod at this point.
Okay. He said Metropolitan Ephraim.
Metropolitan Ephraim has been dead for years, though. This is a month ago. He's talking about more recent stuff.
He said that's, but no. He said in the past tense. That's why Metropolitan Ephraim halted our union with the joining the Callinicos Synod. He said in the past tense. It doesn't matter. It really.
Yeah, but the whole point I'm trying to make with this, or at least the whole point I'm trying to make, is that this is a practice that unfortunately is pretty noxious. I have heard of this with Metropolitan Ecofungal Synod. We know that they'll reordain priests of our synod. We know that they will not reordain priests of the Moscow Patriarchate. Yeah, the good gift says Sergio C. Macarios. And so this is, it's unfortunately, the only thing that I can say is that this is going to require another generation. I think the situation is far better now than it was before. I think that eventually people are going to have to realize that there are other Orthodox besides themselves. And the longer that they keep this kind of mentality where they can't see Orthodoxy in the other, they're just going to continue splitting.
Well, you know, the Fanar sort of, this is not unheard of with like the Greek or group, maybe others. Like the Fanar used to have this, they still have it, I guess, where if you were true Orthodox and you joined the Fanar, you get rebaptized. But if you were a congregate, you have this like sprinkling congregationalist so-called baptism, you get chrismated.
Yep.
Even if like the so-called old calendars where you were immersed 3 times, everything was done correctly. No. They want to make a point and punish somebody. That's what it's about a lot of times.
Yeah.
You have to punish somebody and make a statement to show how much you dislike them or who they came from. That's a lot. Ultimately, it's sort of a vindictive, a policy of official vindictiveness. For lack of a better word.
It is.
Well, it's going against the canons. You're not supposed to be baptized.
Well, what they'll say is that, I understand, but I'm saying what they'll say is that we don't accept any. Yeah, it's kind of weird for them, for the Fanar, for example, to say we don't rebaptize people, and then they rebaptize all calendarists, but not Presbyterians. I mean, it's kind of absurd.
Exactly. That's the point I was making.
Yeah, they're saying like
Father Boniface should consider growing sorghum if he has the space. Definitely, I think he will one day.
Would that grow in Florida?
I don't know. I think I'll grow more bananas.
There you go.
Okay.
Plantain.
Those grow well down there. That's true. Okay. I'm trying to think. Was there other stuff that I had forgotten? I think we were going to go through the question about why, again with the issue of monophysites.
Okay.
And so I have that video up. I'm going to play it at 1.5.
Good.
The one thing that I've noticed that is a problem ever since we started using the cafe chat is that I have to cycle back and forth between the video and the chat for questions. I am going to have to figure out what the tech is so we can show videos while showing comments that are on the cafe, which can be done. I just don't know how yet, but I'm obviously going to have to make that work somehow. Let me see here. So I'm going to start this one. Give me a moment. Okay. And we're going to start this at 1.25.
And of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen. O Lord, thou shalt open my lips, and my mouth shall declare thy praise. O God, be attentive unto helping me. O Lord, make haste to help me. Let them be shamed and confounded that seek after my soul. Let them be turned back and brought to shame that desire evils against me. Let them be turned back straightway in shame that say unto me, Well done, well done. Let them be glad and rejoice in thee, all that seek after thee, O God. And let them that love thy salvation say continually, The Lord be magnified. But as for me, I am poor and needy. O God, come unto mine aid. Mine helper and my deliverer art thou. O Lord, make no long tarrying. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, both now and ever, and unto the ages of ages. Amen. The Holy Ghost, Creator of blessed, vouchsafe our souls to rest, come with thy grace and heavenly aid, and fill the hearts which thou hast made. Thou wouldst send forth thy Spirit, and they should be created, and thou shalt renew the face of the earth. Let us pray, O God, the hearts be open, desires known from the secrets hid, cleanse the thoughts of our hearts by the inpouring of the same Holy Ghost, that we may perfectly love thee and worthily magnify thee. For our Lord Jesus Christ, thy Son, who liveth and reigneth with thee, in the unity of the same Holy Ghost, God, for all the ages of ages. Amen. For the prayers of Holy Fathers, O Lord Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen. So, today we are finishing the reading of my recent translation of sections 11 through 15 of St. Vigilius Atapsis' Contra Judicatum. And if you're interested in who St. Vigilius was, there's a little description, and go back to the first program, and I give a little bit of history and context.
Wow, I sound.
So, to get into the text now. These are the last 5 sections of book 1. He says, For even in man, if we wish to dispute more subtly, many things thou wilt find thus by a certain property were distinctly separated. And so that there, if thou shalt want to calumniate, thou makest many men from one. Then, therefore, through the ordered distinctions of corporal or bodily members and 5 senses to consist, there is no one who knoweth not. Those senses thus naturally may obtain the property of their own office, but nothing with themselves to have in common, nothing to themselves from the property of another they may want to vindicate. And that everything specifically I commemorate, the sight thus of its own function forms the proper office, that neither to hear, nor to smell, nor to touch anything may it be able. The sense of hearing thus administers the office of his own nature, that neither of seeing, nor of smelling, nor of tasting, nor of touching may it undergo the office. The sense of smell also thus, having served of its
So
own
what's being explained here, just so people understand, is
Come in.
so what's being explained here. My translation is like kind of really literal, and but what's being explained is Saint Vigilius, as this is at the end of a longer portion of argument, because there are 2 other videos before this, and essentially he's saying that he's comparing the union of the 2 natures in Christ to the union of soul and body. All right, and if you read through the rest of the argument, that we talk about somebody's if I'm eating food, all right, we're not going to say that my soul is consuming, an apple, but because my soul is inseparably united with my body, in a certain sense, we can say that there is a communication of properties between the 2. All right, so we say there's one person eating the apple. All right. Anyway, I'm just saying it's an elaborate way of explaining something like that. You can go ahead.
So we'll go with a couple of minutes of this just so people can get, if they are interested. I know Joseph Saad, I believe his name was. Yeah. If you are interested in that, I suggest going to the traditional Western Orthodoxy channel where this can be found. But I'm going to play a couple more minutes of it, then we're going to call that off, and we're going to head back to
nor toucheth anything. Taste also neither seeth, nor smelleth, nor heareth, nor toucheth. Touch, finally, which is the last sense, neither enjoyeth, neither perceiveth sound, nor captureth odor, nor discerneth taste. And since all these forms are so diverse, all these senses, yet discrete, thus substituted by natural properties, that they have nothing of commonality, nothing of society to themselves mutually, but they fulfill the ministry of their own function with a certain private and solitary right or law. Nevertheless, there is one. So St. Julius is describing what he's going to do is he's making an analogy between, like the fathers do, between the union of the soul and body in man and the union of the divinity and humanity in Christ. That you can have these 5 senses in man, but yet it doesn't indicate you're dealing with like 5 different men in one person or something as such. Nevertheless, there is one and the same man who, since he consists in the 5 bodily senses by the quinary or the 5-fold property, from themselves mutually differing, he ought to have, according to 5 persons, according to the delusions of these, the Monophysites. So that how great are the properties of the senses, and so great would be the number of persons. Obviously, that's ridiculous. That's what his point is, that the 5 senses in man don't suddenly make there are 5 persons, even though these senses have distinct attributes and qualities. Then to be afflicted with hunger and to eat, to thirst and to drink, to sit and to walk, to go to bed and to rise from sleep, to endure cold and to burn with heats, it is not permitted, without the co-suffering of the soul, that the body either suffers or does these things. Nevertheless, these are property of the flesh. So the body, the human body, the soul and body making one person, even though the soul is not what is eating. Okay, it's not what is drinking water. Okay, but yet the soul co-suffers or endures these things with the body. All right.
Yeah, so that's just a small smattering of the actual video. And so, give me just a moment here. And basically, that's the third part of St. Virgilius of Thapsus's Contra Echidium. So if you want a full and complete kind of philosophical dissection of the Monophysite position, highly recommend going over to Traditional Western Orthodoxy channel and checking out all 3 of those videos. Let's see here.
We have still 4 more books to go. It's probably going to be another 20 more videos.
Yeah, so, well, but it's worth it though, because people don't realize that this stuff exists and that these answers have already been made. That there's nothing really new under the sun here, and so there's not much that we're going to cover that hasn't been covered by somebody else in history already.
And St. Vladimir's press won't print that stuff.
No, of course they won't. I mean, it's just, but that's okay. I hate to say this, but St. Vladimir's press does not really print out too much stuff that's, particularly useful these days.
No.
That's pretty sad. But ultimately, yeah. So we just broke the second hour here. I'm looking to see if there are any more comments, questions, etc. in chat. And so, I don't see anything else here. And it looks like the chat's kind of quieting down on the cafe side. So I think what I'm going to do here, because we are at we've hit the 2-hour mark. And I would like to note again, support the channel. We do need your help. Frankly, it is work doing this kind of thing on the regular. A lot of people have been asking about the incense. I had a big order that was needed to be finished. That should be sent out by tomorrow. And from there, I'll actually put up a website with pricing, etc. So people who are interested in purchasing can. But we still do need support. I can say that even though I've had some large orders for incense, I need a lot more large orders to survive. So everything that you guys are doing to assist has been really helpful, whether it's a small donation, a large one. I'm really grateful. Go ahead. What?
Have you read that? I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
Have you read that Row Core Studies article Subdeacon Nectarius posted?
Which one? Send it to me in the private chat so I can take a look.
If I can find it.
I'm not sure. There's a lot. I see a lot of articles.
That's his most recent one. From
it's on the Row Core Studies site?
Yeah, it's where the proto-deacon Andrei Tsarov
Zarov?
Yeah, was talking about Sergius.
Oh.
And I was wanting to get your opinion on that matter. I don't know.
I know,
that
yeah.
article.
If you
Let
have
me
a copy of the article, if you
let
put it
me
in the chat, let me see if I can take a look at it.
yeah, let me see if I can do this without kicking myself out. Hold on.
Yeah, well, that's why I said just put it in the private channel. It should work.
Okay.
But in the case of here,
Let's see here.
well, no, I don't. That's why Rumpelstiltskin asked, you know the article name. I don't, which is why I asked. Well, if you watch the beginning of this video, I mean, I will say that both sides seemed fairly uncomfortable with some of the details that they were presenting, but they did handle them cogently. I think Luigi, of course, did a better job. I think people are coming around to things like the Dictatus Papae, things that we've been discussing here for 5-6 years. And so
there's a real reluctance to use historical arguments.
Well, yeah, well, it's that
guys.
changed. That kind of changed today. That I will say that it finally changed. But it's interesting to see that I guess Luigi's sources of support seem to have started to move in that direction. But in any case, so it was I thought it was actually a pretty good debate overall. I think that I found that Pine Zap he's a very, in many ways, typical Roman Catholic debater who relies a lot on rhetorical flourish, but I don't think that his arguments were particularly compelling. When I called him out on it, he seemed pretty mad, which you could see earlier in this video, because I have to cut down the video that I have up because it has the whole ending, and I don't think that's kind of what I intended. I just wanted our call to get in.
See, one thing I've noticed is like Roman Catholics really don't like it when you challenge and say that no, the Western Fathers didn't teach like the papacy.
Yeah, because it's one of their it's like kind of a presupposition that they hold. So
they feel the Chieti, like that's the whole Chieti deception.
Yeah.
They can't leave Rome. They're so stuck on the oneness. They just cannot get out of that box.
Okay. Let me see here. Video review request. World Orthodox apologist warns against true Orthodox who baptize Catholics and Protestants. He literally cites pseudo Patriarch Sergius of. Okay, we'll watch it. Why not?
I'm going to have Father Joseph. It's getting really late for me. I got to get to bed because I got to get up earlier.
Okay, that's fine.
So, I'll talk later. Okay.
But we'll definitely, yeah. Okay, no problem.
Bye.
Okay, so, whoa, this went fast. Whoa, this is not what I want to happen. Okay, I guess this will work. Okay, who is it? Oh, this is Ben Cabe. All right, give me just a second. Is this the one where he has the former True Orthodox guy on? Yeah, it is. We have actually reviewed this video. I will find it for you. Hold on. We'll find it for you there. If I can just make this disappear. Hold on. Yeah, we actually did a review on this video. Let me see if I can find the link to it. Give me a moment. But let me get on there and hold on. I feel like we did this and I haven't. Give me just a moment while I head to. Yeah, Ben Cabe. Nikolai writes Ben Cabe is a closet uniate. I agree. Let me see here. Live. In just a moment. Okay, here. Okay. Matthew, I'm just going to put this in the chat. Our response. We do actually respond to things more often than most people realize. But in fact, yeah, we did actually do a response on this one. Yeah, it's the guy who made the video about Metropolitan Jonah made a video about this channel too, I believe. It would not surprise me. We're going to go into more of his stuff. We did one on his thing about Margaret Barker, and it turned into a huge mess. You can watch that with myself and Subdeacon Ictarios, and people were freaking out. Like, he was getting, like, yelled at, like, don't reveal this stuff. And then he showed up on our channel, like, please, I'm not an old calendarist. We're like, okay, we're sorry, just stay honest, be good. So yeah, we have reviewed that stuff. No problem, Matthew. I'm glad I could hand that over. But yeah, basically this is kind of stuff that we have dealt with in the past. So we'll continue to keep doing that as it goes live. So hopefully, there will be more things that we can answer, and we can get to them. And so let me see here. Reader John, did you have any questions that you wanted to ask? Or
yeah, I think I sent it in the chat.
Huh?
I think I sent the link in the chat.
Oh, okay. Yep. All right. Give me a second. Let me share that screen. Give me one moment. Okay, this is. I've seen this. I've seen this article from Brother Sorrow. Okay, now, but where is Subdeacon Ictarios referencing this? I don't understand.
Well, it's on his Orthodox Traditionalist Publications site. It's on his Telegram.
Is it like as proof that they're Sergianists? Because that's what it seems to be.
Well, I think he's offering it up as the ROCOR MP is as being spearheaded by the proto-deacon softening position towards Sergianism and Sergius as a whole because of the MP.
Yeah. Okay, but maybe it's just me, but I feel like with 2007, most of that stuff had already taken place. Like it seems to me, mean, if you look on NFTU, there were already MP deacons being made by ROCOR and vice versa.
Yeah, but I think he's just trying to pile on that the ROCOR MP is not the ROCOR that
the historical ROCOR
that everybody thought they were.
Yeah, for those wondering what article I'm looking at, I'm going to put it in the cafe chat, and I'm also going to put it on the screen so everyone can see together.
Because if you remember pre-union,
yeah,
nobody would have said anything nice about
nothing like this.
Yeah,
well, first off, they wouldn't have put a giant picture of a statue of Patriarch Sergei with, kind of making a speech in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
This was in August 2023, so this isn't exactly like, this isn't pre-union. This is last year.
Yeah.
And
well, this is in the context of also Gorilla talking about the sanctity of Sergius. So.
Yeah. Well, what amazes me is that it starts with, that it says His Holiness mentioned that Western experts politicized historical perception of Patriarch Sergei. Well, that's what happens when you submit to the communists. Will this trend lead to the full acquittal of the Declaration in Russia? Well, the Declaration is what, as you know, caused the split. It says, on this day in 1927, Metropolitan Sergei of the Synod published a so-called Declaration of Loyalty to the Soviet government. The Russian Church had not any legal status since the Bolsheviks' revolution in 1917, And St. Patriarch Tikhon wanted to negotiate as part of the condemned statements of the Royal Court Council and expressed condolences on the death of Vladimir Lenin.
It's pretty much just denigrating and even blaspheming like the memory of Saint Tikhon and Saint Joseph.
They try to say that Sergei was following the path of Saint Tikhon, which is insane. Sergei was originally part of the Living Church, and so he basically came out and he basically said that the joys and sorrows of the Soviet motherland are our sorrows and our joys. No, it was a declaration of unity with the regime, and he followed it up, in seriousness by reporting on catacomb Orthodox Christians, so on and so forth.
Well, and I noticed they're trying to take him in isolation versus if you actually read like St. Joseph of Petrograd, among others, condemning Sergius. It's I don't know. It's mental acrobatics.
It's horrible. But the point is, this is kind of what you would expect.
Yeah. I think that's the point I was making.
Yeah, this is. I mean, I think that should open up people's eyes, but I think it's going to open up fewer eyes than people realize.
Yeah.
With regards to the Luigi Pinesap debate, give me a moment. Let me share the screen because this is on the screen.
Oh no.
Okay. I always feel like the Orthodox should cut it short and say something like, "Okay, for argument's sake, let's say I extend an arm of immense charity and grant you up to the grace of God as an exceptional dispensation up to Vatican II, Vatican I. How can you defend Vatican II in the Church of Francis? How can you defend JP2 with its numerous charismatic gatherings surrounding itself with people shaking around speaking in tongues? How can that be defended?" I would say that it is kind of the theology of Vatican II that allows them to do that, which is part of the reason why they have to defend Francis. You bring these things up, and secretly they're thinking it's a feature because it allows them to defend anything.
It's a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, so from their perspective, they would say that, we don't necessarily see these things negatively. I mean, they won't say that in the context of a debate, but they will say that when they're trying to explain why this diversity is happening to begin with. They don't see that as a negative. They see it as all as variety united under the Pope. It's the Pope's variety pack.
And it necessitates them to slap some Newman on it.
Absolutely. And slapping some Newman on it.
Because without Newman,
despite Pinesap's rage about that, is still very effective for the Roman Catholic apologist. He just doesn't like being called out on it.
And because without development of doctrine, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, all right. So now let's see here again. I am just going to. I think we're going to close up because I don't see any new. Let me just put up the questions, comments, close sign. It seems as soon as I put that up, people suddenly remember questions and comments. So maybe that'll get people inspired. I'll give it a moment. And let's see if anyone pops up with a question. If we don't see a question in the next 2 minutes, then I am going to close down the stream chat. I'm going to kill the stream chat, guys. It was nice while it lasted, but the truth is, it seems like everyone else is just happy with the regular chat. So, as I explained earlier, we are getting a lot of spam. So if you do sign up for the cafe, it is free. If you have a funky email and I don't approve you, just let me know. And I will do my best to see what I can do to fix that. But let me see here. All right, see if there's any more comments that I missed. Okay, so those are the last ones from Cloister. Let me just go here. So we've got a couple of minutes to go. God willing, we'll see. Otherwise, I'm going to close out the chat at 2 hours and 20 minutes. Father Boniface, did you want to add anything today, or?
No, I don't have a whole lot to mention at the moment. Nothing.
Okay. Well, Lord of God, Father Boniface is guesting with Vladika Enoch on the Traditional Western Orthodoxy channel. Thank you, Sunrise. You have a good night as well. And it looks like we're gonna end. We're gonna close out pretty smoothly today. So I'm going to just quickly say thanks to everyone. Thanks to our guests, Reader John, Bishop Enoch, and Father Boniface, for those who are there. Thank you, Father Antonios, for being here for us. Thanks to everyone, our listeners, to those who asked questions and had comments, and to those who support our mission. Support the channel. We at NFTU need your help. Support us by subscribing or donating at nftu.net, on Give, Send, Go, or on Odyssey. We remember all of you in our prayers, and thank you for all the support for NFTU. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. So have a great evening, everyone, through the prayers of the Holy Father. So Jesus Christ, our God, have mercy on us and save us. Amen.
Amen.